When you first hear about a secret room, your mind immediately begins to wander. What could it be? A hidden space in a famous person's home, especially someone as iconic as Alfred Hitchcock, is bound to grab attention. What would a room like this represent? A place of mystery, a secret waiting to be uncovered. The very idea of a hidden room sparks curiosity, especially when you think about the person it's connected to. Alfred Hitchcock was no stranger to the unknown. His films, full of twists, suspense, and unexpected turns, created a world where nothing was ever truly as it seemed. So when you hear about a secret room in his own home, it feels almost fitting. Hitchcock was the master of creating tension, of keeping his audience on the edge of their seats. His entire career revolved around secrets. What you don't know, what you can't see, and what lurks just beyond the frame. The idea that there could be a secret room hidden in his house feels like the ultimate extension of his persona. It's almost as if the room itself is part of a larger story, one that we as the curious public are never supposed to know. What could be in that room? Is it full of things he kept private from the public eye? Could it be a place where he retreated to when the world became too much? People often think of famous figures as being larger-than-life characters, but what if the secret room shows a side of Hitchcock that the world never saw? Perhaps it was a quiet space where he worked on his films, a room that kept him isolated from the world, allowing him to create his masterpieces in peace. Or maybe it was a room filled with objects and memories from his past, things he didn't want others to know about, things that made him more human than we might have imagined. Imagine the possibilities. A room hidden behind a bookcase or a false wall, something that has been untouched for decades. Every little detail adds to the allure. Why was it kept a secret? Was it simply a private space, or was there something darker, something more unsettling about it? The more you think about it, the more the room begins to take on a life of its own, just like the characters in Hitchcock's films. It starts to feel like it's waiting for someone to discover it, just like the twists in his movies that were always waiting to be unraveled. This is where the curiosity builds. What makes a secret room so interesting? It's not just the idea of hidden space, it's the unknown. What could be inside? What stories does it hold? We're used to seeing Hitchcock's work through the lens of suspense. His films often left us questioning what was real and what wasn't. Now with the idea of this secret room, it's almost like a real-life version of the twists he used in his films. Could there be something in the room that would change everything we thought we knew about Hitchcock? Maybe it's a letter, a photograph, or an object that would shed light on his personal life. Or maybe it's something so strange and unexpected that it leaves us questioning his entire career. People who study Hitchcock's life often focus on his films, his style, and the way he built suspense. But what about the man behind the camera? Was he just as mysterious in his personal life as he was in his movies? The idea of a secret room in his house raises so many questions about the kind of person he was away from the public eye. Hitchcock was known for being a private man, and this room may have been his way of keeping a part of himself locked away from the world. The curiosity doesn't stop there. If the room exists, why has it remained a secret for so long? In today's world, it's nearly impossible to keep something hidden, especially something as fascinating as a secret room in the home of a famous director. There are rumors, of course, but rumors are never as satisfying as the truth. What if the room is not just a piece of history, but also a piece of Hitchcock himself? What if it contains something that could change the way we look at his films, his career, and even his personal life? When you think about Hitchcock's films, you realize that he was always playing with the idea of secrets. His characters often carried dark, hidden pasts. They were caught in situations where they didn't know the whole story, and neither did the audience. His films were all about the unknown. And now in his own home, there's this secret room that feels like it could be another part of that world. It's almost as if Hitchcock himself created this room as a metaphor for the kind of stories he told through his films. He built worlds filled with secrets, twists, and things lurking in the shadows. So why wouldn't his own house reflect that? Now think about what it would mean if we were ever able to access that secret room. What would we find? The thought of stepping into that space, of uncovering something hidden for so long, adds to the allure. Maybe the room is exactly as Hitchcock left it, a snapshot of his private life frozen in time. Or maybe it's been forgotten, with dust settling on objects that hold memories of a time long past. Either way, the secret room promises something fascinating, something that's been locked away, just like the mysteries in his films, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. This is why the concept of a secret room in Alfred Hitchcock's home is so intriguing. It's not just about a hidden space, it's about the layers of mystery that surround Hitchcock himself. It's about peeling back the layers of his life and personality, to reveal something that's been kept hidden for decades. It's about exploring the unknown, just like he did in his movies. And it's about asking the question, what else don't we know about the man who gave us some of the most thrilling, suspenseful stories ever told? The idea of the secret room is a hook, something that grabs your attention and makes you want to know more. It's a part of Hitchcock's world that has remained closed off to the public, and it's this secrecy that makes it so fascinating. We'll likely never know everything about it, but the mystery itself is enough to keep us curious, to keep us searching for answers. Just like a Hitchcock film, the secret room leaves us wanting more. And that's what makes it so irresistible. When you hear the words Alfred Hitchcock, a specific image comes to mind. You probably think of the man who invented the psychological thriller, who created films that kept us on the edge of our seats, waiting for the next twist. Hitchcock's style of filmmaking, his use of suspense, tension, and surprise, changed the way we watch movies. But beyond the camera and the screen, there's something even more intriguing: his home. Imagine what it would be like to step into the very place where this master of suspense lived. What kind of world did he create around himself? What secrets might his home hold? This part of the story isn't just about the famous director, it's about the physical space where he lived, thought, and created the world of cinema that we all know today. When you think of a celebrity's home, you might imagine luxury, opulence, and large open spaces. But Hitchcock was known for being a private man. His home was not just a place of relaxation, it was a sanctuary where he could retreat from the public eye. If you've ever wondered about the private life of a celebrity, it's natural to be curious about where they spend their time when the cameras aren't rolling. And for Hitchcock, that meant a space that might be filled with as much mystery as his films. Hitchcock's house wasn't just any house, it was a home that reflected his personality, his style, and his love for all things mysterious. He lived in a large old house in Los Angeles. This was not a flashy mansion, but it had character. It was a place where he could think, plan, and immerse himself in the creative process. The house itself seemed to reflect the kind of world Hitchcock was famous for creating in his films: dark, enigmatic, and full of secrets. If you walked through the front door, you would enter a world unlike any other, a world shaped by the mind of one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Hitchcock valued his privacy and sought to escape the constant attention that came with his fame. This is where the mystery begins. What did Hitchcock do in the privacy of his home? Did he spend hours pacing through the hallways, brainstorming his next plot twist? Or was he in his study, surrounded by piles of books and old film reels, trying to piece together a new story? We may never know exactly what his day-to-day life looked like inside the house, but the idea that a place like this was the backdrop for his greatest ideas adds to the intrigue. There's also something fascinating about the fact that Hitchcock was not only a director, but also a writer and a master of psychological manipulation. His home might have been where he came up with the complex characters and twisted plots that captivated audiences. Think about the films he made: Psycho, Rear Window, North by Northwest. Each of these films is filled with tension, suspense, and an undercurrent of something dark and unexpected. But could it be that the same elements were present in the walls of his house? Was his home an extension of his films? Could the house itself have inspired the eerie, unsettling feeling that is so present in his work? The more you think about it, the more curious you become. Hitchcock's home was more than just a place to live, it was an environment that might have shaped his creative process. The rooms, the furniture, the walls that held his thoughts and ideas, every detail could have been part of the puzzle that made him the genius filmmaker we know today. Did the house have a study filled with writing desks, old scripts, and the scattered thoughts of a man who was constantly thinking about how to keep his audience on edge? Was there a room where he watched films, studied them, and learned from other directors? These questions fuel our curiosity. We are trying to get a glimpse of the private life of a man whose public life was filled with secrets. The house itself was also full of stories. Hitchcock was known to have a particular taste for dark, brooding films, and it's easy to imagine that his house reflected those tastes. Perhaps the decor was heavy and dark, with rich colors and deep shadows. It's said that he loved a good mystery, and it's possible that his home was filled with objects and artwork that reflected this passion. Imagine walking into a room that feels like it's been frozen in time, a place where the air is thick with the weight of unspoken stories. The curiosity builds again. What was inside his home that we don't know about? Could there be objects or artifacts that have gone unnoticed by the public, pieces of Hitchcock's personal history, that tell us more about the man behind the camera? Hitchcock's private life, much like his films, was filled with contradictions. He was known to be a very private person, but he also had a peculiar sense of humor and an odd charm. His relationship with his wife Alma Reville, was a topic of much speculation, and yet little was known about the true nature of their partnership. They worked together on many of his films, and there's an interesting dynamic between them that raises questions. Could the house be a place where these personal relationships were played out in private? Was there a room where Hitchcock and Alma spent their quiet moments together, away from the pressures of the Hollywood world? And yet, for all its mystery, Hitchcock's house was not just a place for him to retreat. It was also the place where he invited people in. Actors, producers, and friends came and went, and the house likely became a space for collaboration and creativity. There is something fascinating about imagining the kind of conversations that took place in the rooms of his home. What did he talk about with his actors? Did he discuss his vision for his films in the living room, or did he share his thoughts on the human psyche over a cup of tea in the kitchen? These everyday moments are just as intriguing as the films themselves, because they offer a rare glimpse into the life of a man who spent much of his time manipulating the emotions of an audience. When we think about Hitchcock's home, it's easy to get caught up in the mystery. But the truth is, the house itself might hold the key to understanding the man who created some of the most unforgettable moments in cinema. As much as we know about his films, there's so much more to learn about Hitchcock when we think about his private life. The house is like a puzzle that we'll never fully solve, but it's one that we continue to try to piece together. Every new detail that comes to light only adds to the intrigue, and the more we think about it, the more we wonder what really went on inside the walls of Alfred Hitchcock's house. The phrase "never mentioned" immediately sparks a sense of curiosity. Why isn't something being talked about? Why would anyone, especially someone like Alfred Hitchcock, keep something a secret? The very fact that the room is never mentioned creates a sense of mystery. If it's something so significant, why would it be kept out of public conversations? This silence around the room makes it even more intriguing. The question why hangs in the air, leading us to wonder what the room holds and why it has been left in the shadows for so long. When you hear that something is never mentioned, it implies there's an unspoken rule. People might know about it, but they choose not to talk about it. This silence could be intentional, or it could be the result of time passing and memories fading. Either way, it gives the room a sense of being something more than just a space in Hitchcock's home. It becomes a secret in itself. The fact that it's never discussed only adds layers to the story, making you wonder why Hitchcock, a man who created countless stories for the screen, would keep something so important hidden away in his own life. Could this room have been something so personal, so private, that Hitchcock didn't want anyone to know about it? As a filmmaker, he was known for playing with human emotions, for getting under people's skin, and for revealing secrets that no one saw coming. What if the secret in this room was something that would shock the public, something so deeply tied to his personal life that he didn't want anyone to discover it? Hitchcock, the master of suspense, often explored themes of hidden secrets in his films. Characters in his movies frequently had dark pasts that were gradually revealed, sometimes to their own surprise. What if this room in his home represented one of those hidden secrets? The silence surrounding the room could also indicate that it's a place that holds painful memories, something that Hitchcock didn't want to be reminded of. We all have parts of our past we don't want to revisit, and it's possible that this room was one of those places for Hitchcock. It could have been a space filled with items or moments from a time in his life that he wished to keep locked away. Maybe it was a room where he spent time reflecting on his own fears or regrets, a place where he processed things he didn't want to confront in the open. The very idea that it's never mentioned suggests that it was a part of his life he didn't want anyone to explore, a part of himself that he kept hidden. But the fact that it's never mentioned also makes you think, Hitchcock was a public figure. He was used to the world knowing things about him, his career, his films, his interactions with actors, even his personal life in some respects. Yet this room remained a mystery. In his interviews and books, he was known to talk about his films, his thoughts on psychology, and even his love for playing tricks on his audience. But never once did he mention the room. The room was a kind of quiet rebellion against his usual openness. If Hitchcock was known for revealing dark, twisted secrets on screen, why would he keep something so significant hidden in his own life? The more you think about it, the more you start to wonder what this never-mentioned room holds. Was it a creative space, a place where Hitchcock came up with his most famous ideas? It's hard to imagine the mind behind Tito and the Birds not having a place where he could escape and dive deep into his thoughts. Maybe this was the room where he created some of his most iconic scenes. Or perhaps it was a place for reflection, where he would take breaks from the chaos of Hollywood and sit in solitude, away from the prying eyes of the public. The curiosity about what the room might contain keeps building, drawing us deeper into the mystery. Another thought is the possibility that this room was not just for his own use. Maybe Hitchcock shared it with someone. Could this room have been a shared space with his wife, Alma Revel? Alma worked closely with Hitchcock on many of his films, and their relationship was a crucial part of his life. Maybe the room was a place where they spent time together, away from the pressures of the film industry. A private space just for them. The fact that it's never mentioned could suggest that this room holds something personal about their relationship, something so intimate and private that it was never meant for the public eye. But what if the silence around the room isn't about keeping something personal hidden away? What if it's about keeping something darker under wraps? Hitchcock's films often dealt with psychological depth and explored themes of guilt, fear, and the consequences of hidden actions. Could the room have been a metaphor for the darker aspects of his life, something that he didn't want to face or reveal? The idea that the room was never mentioned creates a sense of foreboding. What if this room wasn't just a space of creativity or intimacy, but one filled with something far more unsettling? Something that Hitchcock didn't want the world to know about. This sense of secrecy is what makes the room so captivating. It becomes more than just a space in a house, it becomes a symbol of everything that Hitchcock's films explored: the unknown, the hidden, the things we don't talk about. The fact that the room was never mentioned, that it remained a part of his life that no one spoke of, adds an extra layer of intrigue. It's a secret that's been buried for years, and every time someone brings it up, the curiosity about it only grows. What is it about this room that makes it so important, and why has it been kept in silence for so long? The more you try to uncover, the more questions arise. Was it simply a forgotten space, or was it deliberately left untouched? What could be so significant about a room that no one ever discussed? The fact that it's never mentioned only adds to its allure, making it an even more fascinating piece of Hitchcock's life. The secret room becomes a symbol of the man himself, someone who built entire careers on mystery and the unexplained. Just like his films, the room keeps its secrets close, and we are left wondering if we will ever truly know what lies within. In the end, the fact that the room is never mentioned is what makes it so important. It's not just the contents of the room that we're curious about, it's the silence around it. This silence turns the room into a puzzle, a mystery that keeps us guessing. And just like a Hitchcock film, we're left wanting more, wondering if we'll ever truly uncover the truth behind the room that was never mentioned. Alfred Hitchcock's films have a unique style that makes them stand out even today. The way he captured suspense, tension, and fear on screen changed cinema forever. His films like Psycho, Rear Window, and Vertigo are still considered masterpieces. But have you ever wondered where these brilliant ideas came from? What inspired Hitchcock to create such memorable and intense stories? The answer might lie in the very secrets of his life, and it's possible that his home, with its hidden room, played a part in shaping the mind behind these famous films. Hitchcock was more than just a filmmaker, he was a master of psychological manipulation. His movies didn't just rely on action or violence, they relied on the emotions of the audience. He knew how to build tension, how to make us feel uneasy, and how to make us question what was real. His ability to tap into the human psyche and create feelings of dread and uncertainty is what set him apart from other directors. But where did this incredible skill come from? It's said that Hitchcock was fascinated by the darker side of human nature, and his films often explored the fears, guilt, and desires that people try to hide. Could this fascination with the human mind have been influenced by his own experiences and the environment around him, including the house he lived in? Imagine spending time in a house that seemed to hold secrets, where rooms were never mentioned and parts of the building felt mysterious. If you were someone like Hitchcock who made a living out of creating suspense and exploring the unknown, wouldn't that house have become an essential part of your creative process? Could it be that the very space where Hitchcock lived and worked played a role in forming the stories and ideas that became some of the most unforgettable indie films in cinema history? Hitchcock's films often featured characters who were struggling with their own fears and psychological issues. Take for example, Psycho, where we meet Norman Bates, a man with a troubled past and a mind twisted by guilt. Or Rear Window, where the protagonist, played by James Stewart, becomes obsessed with watching his neighbors, only to find himself drawn into a dangerous mystery. These films tap into our deepest fears, the things we don't want to acknowledge about ourselves. It's clear that Hitchcock had a deep understanding of human psychology, but could this understanding have come from his own life experiences? Could the hidden room in his home be a place where Hitchcock faced his own inner fears, a space where he could reflect on the complexities of the human mind? The idea that Hitchcock's home might have influenced his filmmaking is a fascinating one. A man who spent so much time thinking about fear, guilt, and obsession must have needed a place where he could work through these ideas. The house was not just a home, it was a place where Hitchcock could be alone with his thoughts. It was a space where he could explore the darker side of his own mind, and perhaps even work through his own personal struggles. Imagine Hitchcock sitting in a quiet room, deep in thought, his mind racing with ideas for his next film. Could the house have become a kind of laboratory for his mind, a place where he could experiment with ideas and emotions that he later turned into cinematic masterpieces? One of the most interesting aspects of Hitchcock's films is the way they blur the line between reality and illusion. In many of his movies, characters find themselves trapped in situations where they can't trust their own perceptions of what's happening around them. This theme of uncertainty and unreality is one of the hallmarks of his work, and it makes his films even more unsettling. Could this sense of confusion and distortion of reality have come from Hitchcock's own experiences in his home? Maybe the hidden room in his house was a place where he could escape from the real world and explore his own feelings of uncertainty. Perhaps it was a place where he could confront his own fears and anxieties, the things he couldn't share with anyone else. Hitchcock was known for his ability to manipulate the audience's emotions, but he was also a master of using space and setting to create a sense of unease. In many of his films, the locations themselves become characters, influencing the story in subtle but important ways. Think of the iconic Bates Motel in Psycho, or the apartment building in Rear Window. These locations are more than just backdrops, they become integral to the story. The setting helps to build tension, making us feel trapped or confined in a way that enhances the emotional impact of the film. Could the house Hitchcock lived in have been a similar kind of influence on his films? The very space he occupied might have shaped the way he thought about storytelling, influencing the way he used settings to create mood and tension in his films. And then there's the question of Hitchcock's personal life. It's well known that he had a complex and often difficult relationship with his wife Alma Reville. Alma was not only Hitchcock's spouse, but also a key collaborator in his filmmaking process. She worked as a screenwriter and editor on many of his films, and their partnership played a significant role in the success of his career. Could the hidden room have been a place where Hitchcock and Alma spent time together, away from the public eye? Maybe it was a place where they could discuss their work, bounce ideas off each other, and share their thoughts on the films they were creating. The thought of this private space being a place of collaboration between them adds a new layer of depth to the mystery of the room. But it's also possible that the room was a reflection of Hitchcock's own personal struggles. His films often dealt with themes of guilt, obsession, and the consequences of one's actions. Could the hidden room be a symbol of Hitchcock's own guilt or inner turmoil? Perhaps it was a place where he confronted his own fears, the things he kept hidden from the world. As a man who was always in the public eye, it must have been difficult for Hitchcock to keep his personal life private. The room, hidden away and never mentioned, might have been his way of creating a space where he could process his emotions without anyone else knowing. The more we think about the role this hidden room might have played in Hitchcock's life, the more curious we become. Could it have been a place where Hitchcock worked through the ideas that would later become his famous films? Could it have been a sanctuary, where he confronted his own inner darkness, the same darkness that he so often explored in his movies? The house with its secret room becomes a kind of reflection of the man himself, someone who lived with mysteries, secrets, and psychological complexity. And just like his films, the house holds a story that we can only guess at. The more we try to uncover the truth about Hitchcock's hidden room, the more we realize that the room itself is a symbol of the man's creative genius, and the deep dark mysteries that made his films so unforgettable. This room, never mentioned, holds the key to understanding the man behind the camera. It is a place that, much like Hitchcock's films, is filled with uncertainty, mystery, and the promise of something more. The curiosity around this room reflects the curiosity we feel when we watch his films, always searching for the next twist, the next surprise, the next revelation. In the end, the hidden room in Hitchcock's house might just be the final piece of the puzzle, an enigma that we can only begin to understand, much like the films that Hitchcock left behind.
For a filmmaker like Alfred Hitchcock, who was known for creating some of the most suspenseful and chilling films of all time, there was something uniquely captivating about the idea of secrecy. Hitchcock's work was always about taking the audience on a journey into the unknown, making them feel uneasy, forcing them to question what they thought they knew. The films from Psycho to The Birds were filled with secrets, dark corners where the truth remained hidden until the very last moment. In many ways, Hitchcock's life mirrored the plots of his films. He lived in a world of secrets, and the more you think about it, the more you begin to wonder how these secrets shaped not just his work but also his personal life. The fact that there was a hidden room in Hitchcock's own house that was never mentioned is just one more layer to this enigma. It's hard to ignore how it mirrors his films. After all, Hitchcock's career was built on crafting situations where his characters and the audience found themselves trapped in situations filled with uncertainty, suspicion, and paranoia. What was inside that room? Why was it hidden away from the world, not even spoken about in his biographies or interviews? The fact that it was never mentioned adds to the mystery, and with each new question that arises, our curiosity grows stronger. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the secret room is that we don't know what's inside. Hitchcock was a master of suspense. He built entire careers on making his audience feel like something was just out of reach, always hinting at something terrifying but never revealing it fully until the very last moment. This room in his home might just be another example of his mastery of keeping people on edge, holding something back and making them wonder. The room was never discussed, and that silence, just like the silences in his films, created a sense of tension and intrigue. The fact that it was hidden from the public eye makes it seem like there's something within it that must be protected, something valuable or dangerous enough to keep under wraps. We are left with questions. What could be so important about this room? Was it simply a place where Hitchcock could retreat from the world and work on his films in peace, or did it serve a more personal function, perhaps tied to his own emotions or fears? The fact that it was never mentioned makes us think that the room was not just another part of the house, it was a symbol of something deeper. Hitchcock's films were filled with layers of meaning, and perhaps the room held its own set of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Just like the twists in his films, this room could be a mystery that keeps us guessing long after the story ends. Could it have been a space where Hitchcock could process his feelings? His films often dealt with themes of guilt, obsession, and human frailty, topics that were close to his heart. Maybe this hidden room was where he could confront those feelings. He was a man known for keeping his emotions tightly under control, but perhaps in that room he allowed himself to feel. Hitchcock's private life, particularly his complex relationship with his wife Alma, has always been a subject of fascination. Could this secret room have been a place where the couple spent quiet moments together, away from the public eye? Or was it something more, a space where Hitchcock could wrestle with the darker parts of his mind, the parts he often explored in his films but kept hidden from the world? The curiosity about the room only intensifies when you consider the fact that Hitchcock was a man who understood fear. He made his career out of creating it on screen, but perhaps it's the fear in his own life that played a significant role in shaping his films. His movies often explore the dark recesses of the human mind, what happens when a person is pushed to the edge, when their deepest fears surface. Hitchcock himself was known to have a great deal of anxiety, and it's possible that the room was his way of dealing with those fears. It could have been a sanctuary where he could shut out the world and face his own inner demons. But why was it never mentioned? That silence speaks volumes. It suggests that the room might have been something that Hitchcock never wanted anyone to know about. Was it a place where he could escape from his public persona and confront things he didn't want the world to see? Hitchcock's films were full of characters who had dark pasts, mysterious people who weren't what they seemed. Maybe the room was Hitchcock's own version of this. A place where he could hide away from the world, just like the characters in his films, and face whatever was lurking in his own mind. The room's very existence is a puzzle. It's not just a part of Hitchcock's house, it's a key to understanding his creative process. Hitchcock's films were often about things that were hidden from view, things that only came to light when the audience least expected it. The hidden room was a real-life embodiment of this idea. It existed just outside of public knowledge, a secret that only a few people may have known about. And like all good mysteries, it leaves us with a sense of unease, a nagging feeling that there is something important just beyond our reach. The room was never discussed, but that silence only makes it more intriguing. What if it was a place where Hitchcock stored memories of his past, a place where he could revisit the experiences that shaped him into the filmmaker he became? Perhaps it was a space filled with personal mementos, photos, letters, items from his childhood, that allowed him to reconnect with his past. Or maybe it was a place where he kept things that were too difficult to deal with in the light of day. It's not hard to imagine that a man as complex as Hitchcock would have wanted a place to keep his personal history locked away from the world, a space where he could reflect on the things he didn't want to face. In many ways, the hidden room is a metaphor for Hitchcock's approach to filmmaking. His films were all about revealing secrets, one layer at a time, until the truth was finally exposed. The hidden room, kept out of sight and never mentioned, is like one of his films, a secret waiting to be discovered. The more we try to uncover about the room, the more we realize that it's not just about what's inside, it's about the fact that it's hidden in the first place, a place that only adds to the mystery of Hitchcock's life. Could the room have been a space where Hitchcock worked out the concepts for his films? Many of his movies explored the complexities of the human mind, and it's possible that the room was where he worked through these ideas. It could have been a place where he created the characters, the twists, and the stories that would go on to define his career. The fact that the room was never mentioned adds to the idea that it might have been a space filled with creative energy, a place where Hitchcock's imagination could run wild. Ultimately, the hidden room represents everything that Hitchcock's films are known for: suspense, mystery, and the thrill of uncovering something that was kept hidden. The fact that it was never mentioned only adds to its allure. It's a place that holds secrets, just like the films that made Hitchcock famous. And just like those films, we're left wanting more, always questioning what lies behind the door that has remained locked for so long. The room, never discussed, but always there, is as much a part of Hitchcock's legacy as his films. And like all good mysteries, it leaves us with more questions than answers, keeping us intrigued long after the story has ended. Hitchcock's life was filled with complexities, many of which were never fully understood by the public. He was a man who built a career on creating tension, fear, and suspense, but what if the true mystery of his life lies not just in his films, but in the untold secrets of his personal world? The hidden room in his home is one of those mysteries, something that was never talked about, yet something that holds a world of curiosity and speculation. It's like one of his films, with a plot that leaves us questioning what lies behind closed doors, both literally and figuratively. When you think about it, Hitchcock's films always dealt with people hiding things. Whether it was the secrets of a character's past, or the lies they told to protect themselves, his stories often centered around uncovering hidden truths. His characters were often driven by their own guilt, fear, or obsession, things they could not share with the world. Could Hitchcock's secret room have been a reflection of this? Was it a place where he kept his own hidden fears, something he wasn't ready to share with anyone, not even his closest friends or family? The fact that Hitchcock's personal space was shrouded in mystery only adds to the allure. It's not just the idea of a hidden room, it's the idea that a man who understood fear, anxiety, and suspense might have created his own place of retreat, a place where he could process his own emotions and thoughts. The fact that we don't know what was in that room makes us curious. What could possibly have been so important or so personal that it was never mentioned in any of the countless stories about his life? We might never know the answer, but that's what makes it so intriguing. The room becomes more than just a part of his house, it becomes a symbol of the man himself. We often think of Hitchcock as a man who was always in control, especially when it came to his filmmaking. He knew how to manipulate the emotions of his audience, making them feel both comfortable and uneasy, often in the same scene. But was he also trying to control his own emotions? Perhaps the hidden room was a place where he could do just that, a private space where he could process the dark and complex thoughts that fueled his films. It's fascinating to think that Hitchcock, the master of suspense, might have had a personal escape from the world, one where he could withdraw into his own mind and work through his fear. Could it have been a room where he confronted his own personal struggles? Hitchcock had a difficult relationship with his appearance and his personal life. He was known for his anxiety and his desire to maintain a certain image in public. He was also known for his strained relationship with his wife Alma, despite their close professional partnership. Could this room have been a space where Hitchcock retreated to process his thoughts about these issues? Perhaps it was a room where he could escape from the pressures of being a public figure and deal with his own internal conflicts. The thought of him finding solace or understanding in that room adds yet another layer of mystery to its significance. Hitchcock quote,"S films often explored the theme of duality. The idea that people are not always what they seem. Characters would appear normal on the surface, but would later reveal dark hidden sides of themselves. Think of Norman Bates in Psycho, a man with a seemingly innocent exterior but a dark and twisted secret. Or Vertigo, where the protagonist's obsession with a woman leads him into a psychological spiral. Could the hidden room in Hitchcock's home be a manifestation of this theme? Was it a space where the filmmaker could confront his own duality, the part of himself that he kept hidden from the world? The idea that the room might have been a reflection of Hitchcock's inner turmoil adds an intriguing psychological element to the mystery of his home. What quote,"S even more fascinating is that Hitchcock's films weren't just about fear, they were about obsession. The characters in his films often became consumed by their desires, whether it was a need to find the truth, to escape their past, or to control their environment. Hitchcock himself was known to be obsessed with his work, often obsessing over the smallest details of his films. Could the hidden room have been a place where he focused his own obsessions, a sanctuary where he could focus on the things that consumed his thoughts? If we look at Hitchcock's films, it's clear that obsession played a major role in shaping his characters, so it stands to reason that the filmmaker himself may have needed a place to retreat and focus on his own fixations.
The fact that this room was never mentioned in any of the discussions about Hitchcock's life or his films only adds to its mystique. Hitchcock was a man who was meticulous about controlling the narrative of his life. He carefully curated his public persona and his private life, making sure that people saw what he wanted them to see. The hidden room then becomes even more intriguing. Was it a part of his life that he wanted to keep entirely to himself? It's possible that he didn't want anyone to know about this private space, fearing that revealing it might expose something about his own vulnerabilities. If this room was a place where he confronted his fears and obsessions, then perhaps it was something he wanted to keep hidden, just like the secrets in his films. The curiosity surrounding the room deepens when we consider Hitchcock's obsession with the idea of control. In many of his films, the characters are trying to control their circumstances or the people around them. Think of Rear Window, where the protagonist, played by James Stewart, tries to control his environment by observing his neighbors through his window, or Dial M for Murder, where the characters manipulate one another to achieve their desires. Hitchcock himself was a master at controlling the audience's emotions, building suspense and tension in ways that kept viewers on the edge of their seats. Could the hidden room have been Hitchcock's own way of exercising control over his life? Maybe it was his way of keeping something private, something just for him, in a world where everything else seemed to be under constant scrutiny. Then there's the question of what this room might have meant for Hitchcock's creative process. His films were known for their meticulous attention to detail and their ability to make the audience feel both entertained and disturbed. Could this hidden space have been where he worked on the ideas that would later come to life on screen? Perhaps it was a place where Hitchcock could retreat to focus on the psychological aspects of his films, the tension, the fear, the obsession that became so central to his storytelling. The fact that this room was never mentioned might suggest that it was a space reserved solely for the creation of the darkest ideas, the ones that Hitchcock kept to himself until they were ready to be brought into the light of his films. The secret room in Hitchcock's house remains one of the most intriguing aspects of his life, offering more questions than answers. The more we think about it, the more we realize that the room is not just a physical space, it's a reflection of the complex and mysterious man behind the camera. Hitchcock's films were all about keeping secrets, revealing things at just the right moment to create the most impact. The hidden room, never mentioned and kept out of sight, is the ultimate symbol of this idea. Just like his films, the room leaves us with a sense of unease, a feeling that there's something more to discover, if only we could uncover the truth. The room is a puzzle, one that we may never fully solve, but that's what makes it so fascinating. It's a reminder that even the most famous figures have their own secrets, their own places of retreat, and their own mysteries that are never meant to be uncovered. And just like the best Hitchcock films, it keeps us coming back, wondering what lies hidden in the shadows, just beyond our reach.